Speaking of Islam, there was in fact, the Times News is sponsoring a series of political forums in most of the communities in the Magic Valley where we have elections underway for various town and city councils. It's 8:33. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 49. So the forum that took place in Twin Falls, and perhaps some of you people actually saw the follow-up story, maybe you even attended this forum. We have a number of candidates who are running for a handful of open seats. One candidate is, at least one candidate is unopposed. And one candidate could not. In fact, that was an incumbent, and that was Rebecca Milsoika, who's one of our regular studio guests from City Hall. She couldn't make the forum because of a prior commitment. But you had just about, I think, about nine various candidates who happened to be there. 8 or 9. So it was still a pretty crowded house when you stop and think about it. It almost looked like one of those Republican debates on TV. So they did get around to asking a few questions that I think are at least timely. A lot of questions. And the story goes that most of the candidates think the direction of the city is fine. I tend to agree with that myself. You drive around town and you see a lot of building going on, and a lot of that just means people have construction work and they have money to spend in the community, which means it gets recycled and people are going to benefit from that in the long run. However, they got to the question of Syrian Muslim immigration. Now, some of the Syrians coming here, I don't know, maybe they're going to be Christians, could be animists. The majority are going to be Muslims, of course. And that has been of great concern because you just had people from the National Security Agency, and you've got the FBI, you've got them testifying before Congress saying, this could be a problem. There could be a handful, and it doesn't have to be 100, but just a handful of people who could be plants. I heard someone say the other day, well, the other refugees would identify any ISIS terrorist. How would they know? Does the guy walk around and say, oh, this is my membership card in ISIS. Take a look at that. Yes. Hey, when we get to America, please don't tell anyone. Or does he threaten them? How would you know? I mean, somebody shows up wearing rags and saying, I just got chased out of my home and I walked 100 miles to get here. How would you know? So candidates were asked about this particular situation. And those of you who are actually voters in the city of Twin Falls should keep this in mind. You had to go near the end of the story to see this. Most of the candidates were supportive of the Refugee program at the College of Southern Idaho, which has become controversial since news came out this spring that some Syrians might be among the refugees to be resettled here over the next year. Opponents of the program are gathering signatures for a countywide ballot initiative to end the program. There's also going to be a march in Twin Falls 1 week from Sunday. That'll be on October 18th, and from what I gather, there are people coming from all over Idaho to participate in this because some of our other communities are also facing a similar situation. So I'm looking all of this over today, and I'm thinking about this, and the more I hear this, you start to say, who is benefiting from these people coming here? And do they have people by the short hairs over at City Hall? In other words, if you cross the wrong people who are actually going to enrich themselves through this program, does that mean your political career comes to an end? Are you afraid of something? Because you're not afraid of the voters. So something much bigger, at least that you perceive to be much bigger than the voters in this community, must be intimidating you to support this program. Except for one candidate. One candidate. And I've announced the candidates on air, and look, time's running out. I'm not going to rush everyone in here at the last minute. Can't do it. I've got other guests and other things to talk about on the air. We've only had one candidate for Twin Falls City Council who's taken me up on that offer to come in here and sit and talk on the air about this particular situation. That's the 24-year-old candidate, the youngest candidate running, Bethany Rasmussen, which means most likely she has a lot longer than the rest of us to live in Twin Falls. She's going to be here for generations. And she stood out from the crowd at this event. The writer says Rasmussen was the only one to voice significant concerns with it, saying there are a lot of immigrants coming under the guise of refugees and worrying if enough provision is being made to house and educate the refugees who are coming. Quote, we cannot trust the federal government to vet who is coming into our town, unquote. And yes, you've got people. Comey, is he at the FBI? He's one of them. Just the other day, made some comments about this, his concerns. And yet local government says, you pay no attention to him. We've got a couple of studies done by the college itself, which is going to profit off of this, and they say no trouble. You're on the air with Bill Colley at 8:37 on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
It's such a sorry state of affairs that we can't even find somebody in Twin that cares more about what is going to happen to their city, their state, their country, than what they can gain, whether or not it massages their ego. Every day, all I can think about is doing the right thing. What the hell are these people thinking? It's mental illness or something. I don't know. It's a shame. And again, if you don't tune them up, they're going to continue to do what they've always done.
And I think that same old is what we'll get come November.
You bet. And that's the reason why the other day I said a bad word on your program, and my wife said, that was a terrible thing to do. And I apologize. But you see, you get so mad that you every morning it's something new. And just like 60 Minutes this weekend, what will the president have to say about Hillary and whatever else it was? And I think, what a staged bunch of BS.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it.
But what a fraudulent pile, you know what. I'll see you.
Yeah, I'm glad you cleaned it up a little bit there, but I got the message. That was pretty clear. Coming up on 8:39, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bethany, when she was in the studio with us, she got a call from a listener, and she explained her position, and she said, I do think these people need to swear some sort of allegiance to this country. Now, you could accuse her of saying she's looking for a loyalty oath. But friends, we already have one of those. It's called the Pledge of Allegiance. When you put your hand over your heart and you say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, that's a symbol, but it's followed by to the republic with which it stands, or for which it stands. Now, when you say that, that is essentially a loyalty oath. And it says that you back up this form of government we have. Unfortunately, you have a lot of people in that government who don't care any longer. Washington's a good example, and perhaps it's a good example all the way down to the local level, too. 20 minutes now still left in this hour of the program. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. More coming up on immigration and refugees in just a few minutes on this program. President trying to sell a borderless North America, or I guess North and South America. Plenty of sunshine in our forecast. In fact, if you look down through next week, it doesn't look like there's not even a serious threat of rain, but for long stretches, not a cloud will be seen in the sky, which means there'll be a lot of sunshine pouring through your windows. And that sun is a bleaching agent that can, well, if you've ever seen what happens after you let a piece of furniture sit near a sunny window, you'll see that the colors change. They get bleached out. It happens to your carpets, your drapes, even photographs on your walls if they're exposed to the sun a great deal. We've been recommending that you can control that by calling Tint Lady. In fact, what they'll do is they'll do a free estimate. The folks from Tint Lady will come out to your home, your office. They'll take a look at your automobile, and they'll come up with an estimate for you. It doesn't cost you to do the estimate, obviously. And then they could go ahead and do that work, and in the long run, save all of those sometimes very precious things that you have in your home. They do paint protection as well. I'd like to mention that. You can find them online at tintladyidaho.com. They've got about a quarter century of experience already, locally owned and operated, 1887 Highland Avenue East in Twin Falls, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday by appointment only, closed Sundays. The telephone number, 736-8469. Once again, 736-8469. And remember, don't squint, get tint. So we were talking a little bit about refugee and immigration issues a few minutes ago on this program. I think that the immigration issue is still important to people around here, simply because I just read the other day where it might have been the same story I was sharing with you this morning from the local newspaper, where someone was pointing out how valuable these people have been in his local business. Really. And you can't find anybody on the local level who was born and raised in Idaho and has a family that's been here for 3 or 4 generations. You can't find them to do any work. Is that what you're telling us? Or do they want maybe a little bit more money to support their families, or do they have higher expectations in that area? In other words, are you looking for the cheapest dang labor you can find, and you don't really care where it comes from as long as it works for peanuts? 8:45. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can reach us at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. My email address, bill.colley, that's Colley, bill.colley at townsquaremedia.com. So I got thinking about this in light of the fact that same local newspaper, the Times News, has been doing a series about Jerome, Idaho. And going back to I keep bringing this up. They went out there and they interviewed some woman who talked about coming there in the dark of night, thinking she was coming to a big city, and woke up in the morning and was stunned to find out she was in Jerome, Idaho. And nobody ever bothered to ask her, well, how did you get here? I mean, did you crawl through a tunnel? Did you come in the back of a panel truck? Are you here legally? Well, we wouldn't want to embarrass someone by asking them if they broke the law. So you're telling me if you're going to be interviewing a bank robber, you're not going to say, well, did you go in there with a gun and ask for the money? Apparently not, because that would hurt somebody's feelings. And we have an agenda over here at the newspaper, and we'd like to ensure that we maintain that, and that is to liberalize this valley as much as we can, because you know what? When we all came here, we all realized you conservatives were dead wrong. You've had it all wrong for at least 100-some-odd years that you've had this valley settled. The fact that you managed to irrigate it, grow crops, and make a profit, well, gee willikers, we need to have the government come in and show you otherwise. So, there's going to be a lot more of this going on if certain people in the government have their way. Barack Hussein Obama, President of the United States of America, was speaking about this they call it immigration reform. What does reform mean? You keep hearing that. You know, you'll hear newscasters say immigration reform. You'll hear politicians say immigration reform. You hear activists say immigration reform. What does reform mean? Well, it's a euphemism. They're substituting that word for let's open the borders and let them all in. Let's make them, he'll wave the fig leaf and they'll all become citizens. This is the president speaking about this issue yesterday. Take a listen for a moment. Okay, I know he's there. Let's try again.
When I took office, hardworking young people, Americans in every way but on paper, lived in constant fear of deportation. Today, more than 680,000 dreamers live and study and work freely and openly in the country they've always called home. We have reestablished relations with Cuba. We have turned the page on the failed policies of the past. We have strengthened our relationship with Latin America. We put forward a plan to invest $1 billion in our shared security and prosperity in Central America.
Invest $1 billion. Invest. Government as an investor is a really poor investor. Whenever they spend your money, they say it's an investment. Well, I didn't tell you to invest my money that way. If I go to my financial planner and he tells me, oh, I took all of your money and I put it over here, and I didn't know about it, I'm not going to be very happy. Number two, he referenced failed policies of the past when he's talking about Cuba. What failed there? Hello, what failed there? We can't get good cigars? Is that what he's talking about? Failed, and the crowd cheers. These sheep have no idea what he's talking about, but it sounds cool. Failed policies of the past. He's not saying anything. He's got no evidence. He's got nothing to back it up. And then when he talks about these young dreamers, as they're called, that's easier than saying that they were either anchor babies or that they were brought here illegally by their parents when their parents came here illegally when they were, 3-4 years old, and they got acculturated as Americans. But what he's saying is, you got to give them a free education, and of course they're all going to vote for Democrats. And that'll be a good thing because then we'll be able to give more people free stuff. And that'll keep America going. All we have to do is give everyone everything they want. I'll have a printing press set up right over in the Oval Office, and whenever anybody comes in, I'll turn it on and I'll give them a stack of money. And that'll ensure that my party stays in power forever, or as long as the United States can hold together, which might only be a few months. But 10 minutes now away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Our telephone number, 736-0300. How much longer do we have to go through with this? It is so obvious what they are doing. He is essentially saying we're going to eliminate all of our borders and just let people roam around. There is a reason that nations have borders, secure borders, because you get to a certain point, you cannot allow everyone in. It will not work. Throughout human history, we have great evidence of this. Peggy Sands Ochorsky, writing at the Washington Times, facing the agonizing immigration duty. It's a truth universally acknowledged that no nation can sustain open borders, she writes. Even the wealthiest, most popular nations of immigrants, such as the U.S., cannot possibly accept everyone who wants to immigrate or even qualifies to do so. Nations have the core right and duty to choose who can immigrate. And then she goes on to say this, and talk about liberal America that promotes this idea, yet that same liberal America runs all of our colleges and universities. She writes, think of the United States and other highly desired immigrant host countries as a popular public college. Millions of people qualify for entry, but college administrators get to and must choose who is accepted for admission. They are making life-changing decisions for the applicants and often agonizing ones for the colleges trying to be fair and diverse. But that's true. Colleges do not allow everyone to come in because the college would then collapse. It cannot work. And that's the thing that Lefty doesn't want you to understand. Lefty is trying to obfuscate, to confuse, to put some fog into the air so you don't see that. We have a caller with us, and you're on the air on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Hi, Bill. Just a response to your guy in the newspaper who says the refugees have been a good asset to his business. Well, from what I understand, the government pays for half their wages and all of their benefits, so no wonder it'd be a good asset to his.
Gee, I wonder if we can all get that. Or is that just for people who are in politics or influencing politics?
No, I think it's just for anybody who hires them.
And, of course, once you do that, gee willikers, this is a great program. Why don't we all do it?
Right. So it's a win-win situation for any employer, but it's lose-lose for the taxpayers. So,
well, I think there's three words that sum that up. I got mine.
Right.
Doesn't matter about anybody else. I got mine.
Sounds about right. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for the call. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 736-0300, or you can reach us at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. It's 8:53:51. Tomorrow's high temperature, we were saying yesterday it would be 88. We've backed off to 87. When you feel that, tell me what the difference feels like, 1 degree. I'm sure you'll notice if you've got skin that sensitive, you probably can't even wear clothes, which means you don't go outside because that would really complicate the situation. A couple of more things on this immigration and refugee situation in this country and that effort to pretty much water down the good old USA and really the understanding of our founding fathers and the founding documents. Number of sanctuary cities to grow to 340. Thousands of illegals released to commit new crimes. Stephen Dinan at the Washington Times. The list of sanctuary cities has grown to more than 340. Now, why is it when we talk a little bit on the air occasionally about the fact that we believe that in Idaho we should have the right to self-determination, liberals will scream that, we're secessionists and that if we don't like the laws, we pick up our ball and get angry and go home. We stop playing ball with them, and yet they ignore the laws on sanctuary cities. Why is it that they do that? Why is it that they're so selective about this? How come they can't go along and realize that they're pretty much hypocrites in this situation? More than 2,000 of those released who were scheduled to be deported, and by the way, deportations are way down. I read about that in the Daily Signal the other day. 2,000 have been arrested for yet more crimes, according to a report released last Thursday by the Center for Immigration Studies. Among those released are illegal immigrants accused of murder and brutal assaults, said Jessica Vaughn, the report's author. Well, but gee willikers, we wouldn't want to hurt their feelings, and they've all volunteered to vote Democrat. And they're all going to vote twice. You're on the air with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX. What's up?
Hey, good morning, Bill. I'm just calling. I have a little experience. I'm a pastor, and I work with immigrants, the refugees here in Twin Falls. And I moved here from Detroit, Michigan, where I had kind of a multicultural congregation there, and I've seen two different groups. in the Dearborn Hamtramck area, the Muslims had a large group there. They were not interested in assimilating with the American culture. They wanted to use Sharia law. And in Hamtramck, about 3 times a day, or maybe it was 5 times a day, you'd hear the Muslim call to prayer over the public loudspeakers.
But please don't turn up the sound of your chimes at your church. That would be wrong.
Exactly. But here's my experience here in Twin. I work with a group of Burmese people coming from Myanmar. Many of them are fleeing because of religious persecution, and I've found them to be wonderful people, hardworking, and so my feeling is it makes a huge difference what their religious background is.
Also really where they come, because the Dearborn area settled a lot by Yemenis who came over here in the 1950s to work in automobile plants. That happened in Lackawanna, New York, outside of Buffalo as well, where the Lackawanna Six were plotting terrorist attacks. And yet people coming from Southeast Asia seem to have an entirely different culture. And when they get here, they become very productive citizens, and their students all get A's, or their children all get A's. And it's amazing to witness that. It's a vastly different culture across maybe a couple of thousand miles.
So I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I am very concerned about bringing Muslims in to Twin Falls. But on the other hand, I can see that some of these folks from Asia are really being a benefit to our culture.
Well,
they're willing. They want to become Americans.
No one is saying let's throw up a gate and not let anyone in. I think what people are saying is let's be a little judicious and a little wise about who we bring in.
Sure, and I agree.
Hey, thank you much for the call. Have a good day. The Burmese people and the Vietnamese people and the Laotians and the Hmong, they've all been very successful when they get to this country. It seems it's part of their culture, and the Indians coming over from India. I mean, they're leading CEOs, and 2 of them are governors. Their children are governors, and frankly, why can they do that? Well, there's a fellow writing today at Crisis Magazine, William Kilpatrick. He teaches history at Boston University. He says that Muslim allows polygamy and temporary marriage for men, allows men to marry children, allows men to divorce their wives with ease, and in general looks upon wives and children as little more than property. And then he quotes a couple of scholars, women who've been looking into this, who left that faith. They say that the Muslim family system not only creates distrust between man and wife, but also between father and son, mother and daughter-in-law, and between the wife and her friends. The dysfunctional and violent nature of Islamic societies is simply the Islamic family system writ large. And then you know what he says? Right now, there's a conference, a synod on family going on in Rome, hosted by the Vatican. And he said the bishops from Europe who are all attending that and talking about how to strengthen families are also the same people who are saying, let's open the doors and let these people in. Speaking of hypocrisy, 9 o'clock news is ahead. 1 more hour of the program still with us. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.